First off, thank everybody for coming in today. My name is Byron Chopek. Welcome to the Slack Community Chicago chapter. This is my son Owen, who decided to hang out with me here. Today, we are talking about building customer community within Slack. We have Zach Horowitz. Did I say that right? I'm sorry, Zach. I should have.
Close enough. Hot top.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
And from Tighten-It and Laurence Fitch from Bird. Here's my other son, David. You want to join too, don't you? Let's not push any buttons, guys. All right. So as you can see, it's a little chaotic here, but just to let everybody know, if you do want to join, we are based in Chicago, but if you do want to join your local chapter, you can go to slackcommunity.com to do that, or you can start your own chapter as well if you do not have one. So I'm going to turn it over now to Zach to start us off. Go ahead, Zach.
Great. Thanks, Byron. And I'll let you handle the situation on your end. Anyway, lovely to meet everyone. I am Zach. Whoops, jumped a little too far, too quick. So as Byron mentioned, we'll be talking about building a customer community in Slack. I'm going to handle the first 30 minutes and then hand it over to Laurence, who's going to dive a little bit deeper into some tactics on how to get deeper into building a customer community in Slack. So let's begin. By the end of my talk, you'll understand why cross-functional organizations should invest in community. What does community actually do inside of an organization to actually help lift all boats? Why Slack is a strong foundation for community building. You'll learn how to set up a successful Slack community architecture, some details on actually getting a Slack community set up, as well as what leading community managers do to create delightful Slack experiences for their members. So a little bit more about me. My name is Zach Kotov. You can find me on LinkedIn here. I love to snowboard, big fan of comedy, and love to eat. And so exotic foods are definitely up my alley. I'm the current CEO and co-founder of a company called Tighten-It. We build a platform for Slack to help you build communities within Slack. I'm also the New York City chapter leader for Slack, so that we're the largest chapter in the world, and I'm excited to join the Chicago chapter to kind of present as well. But if you're based in New York, please find us inside the Slack community at #membersNYC. My story in community and with Salesforce and Slack actually started back in 2015. I joined the community cloud at Salesforce. So I was an engineer and moved into a product role there. So I worked at Salesforce for about 7 years, building enterprise-grade communities for Disney, Home Depot, Google, really large organizations that were focused on self-service. I then left Salesforce to join a company called AirKit AI. Some of you may have heard of it because it was actually acquired back by Salesforce earlier last year. And so now AirKit actually helps power a lot of Einstein Copilot. So I come from a very big community and AI background. So a little bit more on the agenda today. What we'll be covering is a little bit of intros. We just did that, a presentation, a short demo, and then we'll have some time for audience Q&A. And as suggested, I'll actually open up even in the middle of the presentation, an opportunity for questions. So please feel free to ask questions inside the chat, and we can cover those as I go along. And you may have missed it. There may be swag as well for some of those audience members who asked the best questions. So first off, a big question of why community.
So, sorry, real quick. Yes, we will be. I forgot to mention we will be having swag. Must be present towards the end of the session here to redeem your swag. So thanks. Sorry about that.
So I first start with the community return on investment. And I think this is a great slide from Gareth Wilson, who runs a company called Community Inc. And he likes to present this slide as what does community do? And I really mentioned it earlier, community lifts all boats because community is an accelerator within your organization. It can't be pinned to a single KPI, and it's really one of those customer engagement tools that allows you to help every member of your organization solve very particular problems. So whether that problem is around marketing, around user-generated content, building SEO, or even having ambassadors for your program to go and become champions that go out and represent your organization. Support for case deflection. So being able to take what would have been a case that ends up going into your customer support organization and having a community member answer that question before it ends up hitting your organization, as well as peer-to-peer support, connecting members that might be able to support each other as cohorts or even as partners, be able to share ideas and have kind of this hand-in-hand support system inside of the community. Sales, partners, readiness, and product discovery. Community is a phenomenal way to allow your partners to really sell themselves as the knowledgeable experts around your organization, to provide readiness and product discovery. So being able to post about certain new features that are going on in the community and creating and generating interest from what would have been a low intent individual into a high intent individual. Success, so honest reviews and adoption rate. So really just focusing on how do we take everything that we're learning about the product and be transparent and have the opportunity to create those aha moments with our customers. The other one, which most people don't think about, is your most talented individuals, the ones who are most passionate about your product, actually might end up being great future employees. So having a talent organization that can tap into the community for future hiring. And if you're like me as a past product manager, being able to jump into the community to get feedback on pilots, to be able to support product boards and get feedback on what we're about to deliver on our roadmap, as well as even just having idea generation so that you can collect as much as possible from as large a group as you can. So the first question I often get is, how do I actually go ahead and build a community? And this is actually kind of a very confusing question, because a community is not built. It's actually grown. It's one of those rare parts of your organization where you don't have a lot of control over the outcome of a community. What you do control is the space in which a community is built, right? So very often we find that teams are trying to have very clear definitions of what a community is, and they actually end up hurting the community in the process. What you want to control is how community can actually interact with each other and building the best possible foundation for this to thrive. So a little bit more on the B2B community platform landscape. So what are some of the tools that exist out there to build B2B community platforms? And there are 1,000 ways to slice and dice. So this is just one layer, and feel free to build and look for your own. But the way that I have really looked at the community space is around two big separate spaces: the conversational communities and the modern forums. And so with conversational communities, you're looking at Discord, Slack, WhatsApp, even Facebook groups. And on the modern forum side, these are more structured communities, whether it's Gainsight, Chorus, Salesforce Experience Cloud, my old employer, Better Mode, and Circle, right? And there's many, many more that are not listed in these two sections, but each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages, right? With a conversational community, you're really thinking about engagement and interactivity, right? How do I get conversations forming between customers in real time, right? Whereas in a modern forum, which is much more web-based, this is primarily built around discovery. So having a space where people can ask questions, they can search on Google and find these answers, or even interact with kind of content that exists in perpetuity. And then, just to throw it in there, we are building a platform tight-knit, which we believe is the first modern conversational forum. So if you're interested in learning more, I thought I would throw this in. So why Slack? Well, this is actually a pretty interesting problem that Slack faces. Slack is a productivity tool. Many of you use Slack every day for your workspace, right? You're using it as a way to message your employees, a way to message kind of everyone that exists within your internal company ecosystem. It's not generally used as a community tool. However, it's heavily used for community building, ironically enough. So Napkin Math actually shows that approximately 63% of Slack workspaces are used for community building. So Slack has built a phenomenal collaboration tool, right? And across the history of Slack, we have seen that many of the things that are great for working with our employees are also great for working with our community members as well. So whether those are channels, reactions, shareable message and interactivity, threading, the analytics behind Slack, If you're a pro workspace, you even get the workflow builder and, so on and so forth. So Huddles, Slack Connect, all of these things are built in a way to bridge the gap between employees as well as customer communities. So a lot of what Slack has already built is super useful today for those community building tools. So just to give you a very clear definition of what the difference is between that internal employee workspace and that external community workspace, an employee workspace is really focused on employee to employee. I like to describe this as employee to single entity. So if you're using Slack Connect, that would exist inside your employee workspace, right? So connecting from your company to another company one-to-one or another partner one-to-one. But where a community workspace actually accelerates things is really from entity to entity. So employee to multiple entities at a single time. So bringing your customers together to communicate, bringing your partners together to communicate, as well as bringing them together to be able to establish relationships beyond your own employee workspace. So this is really thinking about ecosystem. Of course, there's a little caveat. Every organization is different. This is just a notably common pattern that we see out in the kind of Slack world. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. This is a great time for us to take any Q&A. We still have plenty of time in this presentation. And yes, Michael, I will distribute this deck to participants. Any questions as I go along? And let me check the chat as well. There is a Q&A feature as well. I don't know, Byron, if you're checking on my behalf.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at the chat as well here. Give me a second.
I see a question from Mika, so let's jump into that. Where did you say you would place discourse? I would actually put discourse in the modern forums. Actually, discourse is almost a definition of a modern forum. And primarily the reason I would say that, Mika, is that a lot of the conversations that happen on discourse are not these like immediate transactional conversations, right? These conversations might exist over periods of several hours, if not days. And so discourse actually sits more in that modern forum space. Cool. Well, we'll keep jumping ahead, but feel free to jump in and ask any questions, and I will find some other moments to pause. So if you're interested in what are some of the features that Slack provides, and Laurence is going to jump really deep into this as well, but I'm going to just kind of talk about some of the biggest ones that allow Slack to be a great community platform. The first one is the Slack invite link. What most people don't realize is you can take an invite link and actually share it out so that anyone can join your Slack workspace. So you can open it up to be an open community so that anybody who's able to find this particular link that you share out is able to join your workspace through that invitation. One key note is that this Slack invite link is limited to a certain number of users. I believe that is still 400. So just keep wary that as you begin to grow your community, you might have to update this invite link a few times. One of our best practices that we recommend is to create a static URL and then update the redirect behind the scenes. Custom emojis, we'll be talking a little bit more about this deeper. But sometimes having those custom emojis really helps build that community brand. Laurence will jump deeper on this one at channel and at everyone. A great way to grab everyone's attention in specific channels or across the entire workspace. And then free or pro. And this is one that I think is really interesting, is that Slack starts free, and a lot of communities that we have seen out in the ethos start free as well, right? And when you feel like it's the time to move into a paid community, that might be an opportunity to say, hey, is pro something we want to consider? Is it something that fits into our business model? And could we upgrade in order to get advanced workflows and message retention at the same time? In terms of an architecture, what we have generally found, and again, this is just a best practice. This is really just a lot of research that we've done over reviewing hundreds of Slack communities, and a generalization as well of some of the channels that we believe are the best ones to have within your community space. So a general announcements or changelog channel, these are kind of marketing and engagement channels. These tend to be broadcast only channels where you're able to shoot out a message to every user, and they still can add in threads and interact with those messages. But this gives your team a space to be able to create that broadcast so that there's a single location that they know is coming strictly from the team. I think one of the most important channels to have in a community, and probably one of the most active, is the intros or say hi channel. And this is really about engagement and connection. So providing your users that first day opportunity, that frictionless way to be involved and actually introduce themselves, say, hello, here's who I am, here's where I am, here's what I'm a part of. And hopefully others that are paying attention can actually go, hey, wait, I'm a part of that same demographic, and I can jump in and invite someone to join some other channel where we're actually discussing those topics. A help, support, and bugs channel. So this is really primarily built for product organizations or any sort of service organization. So some of those active channels where people just want to go in and ask questions and get help or support from some of the problems they're running into within your product or external service. Feedback and wish list. This is back when I was a PM, really the best place to go to learn what people aren't telling you in either meetings or in channels or some of the biggest customers you're meeting with. It gives that open space for the product and success teams to learn as much as they can about what users want. And so building with the community is a phenomenal way to keep your ear to the ground, not just about what people want from your product, but even what people want in terms of integrations, or even what's going on out in that particular industry that might be a new opportunity for a new product itself. Best practices and showcase. A lot of people want to be able to show off what they've built with your product. They want to be advocates for your team to be able to say, hey, I'm an expert in what we're doing here. So giving place to have that co-creation of content for avid users to really put their stamp on your brand. Location and member-based user groups. So allowing, as your community begins to get larger, creating these really tight-knit spaces for engagement and connection. So having more intimacy, having more targeted groups where they can ask particular questions is a really phenomenal way to kind of create these cohorts within the community program. And then finally, going back to that space to grow. So random jobs, events, community. I add this Lao Tzu quote, by letting it go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go. But when you try, the world is beyond the winning, right? So really focus on how do I build a space where I might not have control as a community manager, but providing my members an opportunity to treat the community as one of their own and really provide back kind of what they have to offer. I'll take a quick question because I saw them come in. I'll take one from Swap Mill. This architecture works only for company or community or mixed based. So I would say, Swap Mill, most of what you're seeing here, I have seen pretty much all of these channels in at least a company-based community. So think I'm a company, I want to be able to interact with all of my customers. I would say all of these channels are ones that I definitely see. In ones that are specifically community-based, so where the community top line is actually the organization. So, I could list a few examples of this that some people might know, but these are like professional associations, companies like Pavilion that provide an opportunity to join and actually grow their own education within a larger space of CMOs and CXOs. So in those communities, you'll see probably less around help, support, and bugs and feedback and wish lists, and much, much more around user groups that actually allow people to connect at a deeper level and get closer levels of education. But again, it really is a mixed bag depending on, what type of product or what type of company you're building. And I saw Christina had a question. Have you found that folks use Slack as a community workspace already use Slack for other purposes? I would say 100% yes. I would say that is probably one of the biggest reasons that I've heard people gravitate to Slack. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. I don't want to ruin the quote I have at the end and give you the end of it, but people like what they're familiar with. And having something you're familiar with as a community platform makes it really easy from a cognitive load to be able to get people into the product, get people trying it out and using your community platform. So having to introduce someone to Slack where they use it 9 to 5 during their regular day is a much easier process of getting someone onboarded into a community. We're going to jump into a few pro tips. So back in February, I'm happy to share out that presentation as well. It was a great panel that we ran with some really expert community managers, some of which I saw Joel online. Have to you in a moment, Joel. You have a slide as well. But they gave us some amazing tips of like what they do in their own community spaces to really accelerate the community look and feel. So Demario Bell runs a community at Culture Amp called People Geeks. And he really talked about using Slackbot custom responses to promote inclusion. And I wanted to add one that we have in the tight-knit community that we took as advice from Demario, actually. So instead of using language like, hey, guys, can we promote more inclusivity by having something like, how about we try something more inclusive? Hey, everyone, or hey, party people, right? Like having that fun, that language to be able to change kind of the norm within a community and pushing people in the right direction. The next one is Grace. So Grace runs a community at Lattice called Resources for Humans. She loves to schedule messages because she runs a global community of people all over the world. So having messages that's scheduled for particular times helps her operate where she's able to not disrupt the majority of users who might exist in certain time zones. So I actually took a snapshot of something from the Slack LinkedIn, which is coming very soon. So I'm hopeful, I mean, we're guessing here that this is going to be scheduled messages and threads. So really excited about that as well, coming out of the Slack ecosystem. And then finally, Lucky Joel, I added our own tight-knit emojis. Joel has been a huge fan of some of these as well, but really using custom emojis to bring the culture to life visually. So having a way to take your community and not just using that standard emoji set, but bringing your culture and brand into the conversation. And Joel has a whole extra talk, and you can even add it in the chat about really promoting inclusivity as well, using your emojis as a way to do so. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, though. I do want to mention Slack has a lot of community gaps, and we'll cover this in a moment. So Slack, again, is not a community platform. It's a productivity tool, but it's a phenomenal collaboration platform, which is why we see it so heavily used for B2B communities. Where it struggles, though, are some of these key areas. So customer advocacy, moderation, onboarding, member engagement, event promotion, SEO, forums, branding, and content resource libraries. And actually, one of the reasons I bring this up is because I'm going to give you a very short demo of what we are doing at TightKnit. And so my entire business is built around how do we make Slack a better community platform for your company and for its members. And so our very premise was, what if we could take all of what was happening in those modern forums and bring that same modern forum love back to the Slack ecosystem. And so my background coming from Community Cloud, we took a lot of the learnings we had from that, and we were able to actually build a solution that allows us to take the content coming from Slack and push it out into the web. And I'll give you a demo now of that. You know what, before I jump into the demo, this is actually a great opportunity. And I know I'm cutting myself off, but if there are any additional questions, please feel free to shoot them in, or I will just keep jumping through. Cool. All right. Well, I will jump into a demo then, and I'll make sure that everyone can still see my screen. But this is the TightKnit community, and I'll jump into what this looks like in Slack. But this behind the scenes is 100% powered by your Slack community. So all of these posts, all of these messages, all of the custom emojis are getting pulled in from the Slack ecosystem. So if I actually jump into this post right here, this post right here is coming in from Slack. You can see my custom emojis, you can see additional comments, and all of that is being powered behind the scenes by my Slack workspace. On top of that, we have the ability to promote directories for all of your users that are within that Slack ecosystem, leaderboards to promote that gamification quality, as well as even events. So this event, you might seem pretty familiar, is the event we're running today. We were able to build this using a native object inside of Slack and push this out into our site. Now it's picking up SEO, and others are able to interact with it straight from within here. What this looks like back inside of Slack, though, if I jump over, we have our tight-knit app. And our tight-knit app is a Slack app supercharged to power your companion forum site and your community and all of the things that you would need to really run a great community. So whether it's profiles, events, gamification, even integrations and APIs, we're giving you as a community manager essentially the Figma for community building of Slack. How do I control and operate everything I need to do within my community ecosystem? So all of our channels and are able to convert into those public feeds. We're able to decide if they're auto-synced or if they're manually synced, if some of the content we don't want always to go live. So all of that is built within the tight-knit platform. I just wanted to give a very quick demo of what we're building in case anyone was interested in learning more, because part of that problem is that Slack just is missing a lot of the functionality one would need to build that robust community, so we fill in the gaps. So there was a great question, and I'm just going to make sure I remember who asked it. It was from Christina. And Christina asked, have you found that folks use Slack as a community workspace already use Slack for other purposes? And the key quote here is meet your members where they are. And the reason I mention that is Slack is not the best community platform for everything. Slack is the best community platform for what you might be solving, right? And there's a big rule list. This is all made up by me, right? So these are all generalizations. And so this is Zach's B2B community rule of thumb. And these are just a limited set of some of the conversational community platforms that are out there and how I have kind of seen them being built out in the ecosystem. And so I'll just actually work my way backwards. I'll work from start to end. So I get a lot of questions about Discord. Discord is a great community platform, but it's not always the best for everything, right? And there's no such thing as the best community platform for everything. Some community, you're going to have thousands of community members that prefer one versus the other, and it's really about finding the optimal for your members. So these are all generalizations, but I broke it down by demographics and industry. And again, I will be sharing out this deck as well. For everyone to be able to take part in. But just to cover the ones I think that are most particular to us for Slack, what I have found is that Slack is phenomenal for a professional audience, essentially a desk worker. These are individuals who work 9-to-5 jobs, who might be in, go-to-market sales and marketing. They might be HR and ops, finance organizations. They might be part of professional associations where they're trying to learn more and educate themselves across, chief of staff, or they are research individuals. There are communities that exist for virtually every role that exists within a large corporation. Higher education, using Slack as a great way for student groups or alumni associations. And then one that I think is really interesting is enterprise developers, because developers exist across a whole bunch of community platforms. One of the things we've learned is actually developers are very community focused. So I will say Discord has quite a bit of open source software, but if you're focused on enterprise development, we do believe Slack is one of the more professional places to have for kind of higher up leadership to come and ask questions. So I want to quickly cover what you've learned today. You learned why cross-functional organizations should invest in community. You've learned why Slack is a strong foundation for community building. You've learned how to set up a successful Slack community architecture. And then against Joel's will, as we know, I was able to show off some of our great pro tips on what leading community managers do to create delightful experiences for their members. So we'll have a quick moment for Q&A. There's a lot of ways to connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn here. That should lead you to my LinkedIn, hopefully. You're able to connect with us on the Members NYC channel for Slack Community. We run a lot of events for the New York City chapter. And if you're ever in New York, feel free to say hi. And then if you're interested in learning more about Slack community building, our community with Tight-Knit is an open space for anyone interested in learning more. We've got consultants in there for building Slack communities if you're really interested in investing in it and really just have accidentally built this phenomenal space for anything Slack community oriented. So now I'll jump over to questions before I hand it over to you, Laurence. Apologies for running a few minutes over. I see a question from Michael Frank. Very informative. Thank you. Let's see. I missed a question. Oh, Swapmill. Sorry. This architecture. No, hold on. I saw a question. There we go. That platform whole built in Salesforce Community Cloud. No, actually, Swapmill, that platform is built with Tight-Knit. So that is our platform. However, we do embed into Salesforce Community Cloud and Experience Cloud. We also embed into Khoros and Gainsight and other community platforms. So we have actually found a lot of customers of ours use us as an integration platform as well. So taking those great conversational experiences and pushing them into their existing modern forums, right? So not everyone is starting fresh, and being able to take a new conversational space and bridge it back to your existing community architecture is a really big use case of ours with Tight-Knit. Wesley asked, do you have a recommended community platform for the arts, namely film and TV? We are a nonprofit membership-based organization looking to build out a platform. We're in the process of building out on Slack. And I think, Wesley, it's hard for me to give a complete generalization because, again, it matters who are these people in the arts, film, and TV industry. I actually saw my mom is in the audience, and my mom used to work in this industry, right? And there's the creatives and the suits. You've got your creative folks that are probably not living in Slack, and you've got your suits that are working on distribution. I would say those suits are probably going to be in Slack, and I do not know where the creatives will exist, but it might not be in that Slack ecosystem. And yeah, Wesley, if you want to follow up after, feel free to reach out to me in the Slack community. I'm happy to share some thoughts. I'll just take 2 more questions, then I'll hand it over to you, Laurence, and we can go to the end. That's making in any unique tech stack. Swapmill, if you're interested more in our tech stack, happy to answer in our Slack community and give you the details of what we're building with. I see we'll take the last question from Alejandra, and then I'll answer any questions people have in the chat. Former Salesforce employee in the ed tech side, woohoo! I work with a lot of orgs that see Slack as a bandwidth constructor. Learning and any platform takes time, and I've had the opportunity to facilitate onboarding and value add presentations about Slack. What is the biggest selling point that you've seen across? Does Slack have a tracking data feature on Slack that I can track what is most being used? The most example, Canvas versus Huddles. I think that's a multiple question, so I'll try to answer the middle one. I've had the opportunity to facilitate onboarding and value add presentations. So what is the biggest selling point that you've seen for that? I think Slack is a phenomenally easy tool from that cognitive load to get people onboarded, right? There's a lot of individuals who use something like Slack, whether it's Slack or Teams or some messaging platform. So getting them adjusted to using that as a platform is a really easy way to get going. And then I think on the ed tech side, even if you have students, it's actually a really great way to learn how to work, if that makes sense. You're going to have to learn these tools, and having something like that to kind of get adjusted to the future of working. I see a lot of, young student organizations that think in that same regard. Okay, I'll answer the rest of the questions online. Thank you, Laurence, for letting me run a few minutes over. I'll hand it over to you and stop sharing. And if anyone wants to connect, I will be in the chat.
That's all right. Thanks, Zach. So let me share my screen now. Cool. Just give me all good that I'm sharing my screen, Zach.
I can see it.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks for lining that up, Zach. I'm really happy to speak with you all today. I'm going to kind of talk about, once you've set your community up, something that we've kind of coined as the Slack etiquette or Slack etiquette of running your community, because they're like any other tool or platform. There's a certain way of talking in Slack, certain way of setting your Slack up that will ensure success. So a little bit about me and who we are as Brid. We founded this company a year ago, and we're one of the first Slack certified and focused partners globally. So I used to work at Salesforce and used to work at Slack, much like Zach. You see somewhat of a theme here. And we really saw that there's an opportunity to unlock the true value of what Slack can provide to both communities, but also to businesses that use it as an internal tool as well. So a little bit about myself. As mentioned, I worked at Salesforce for over 5 years across 3 different products. Been a Slack user for over 6 years. I was part of a company that was bought by Salesforce. And I'm actually the Slack community and chapter lead for Singapore. So I also run these events in that side of the world. So my LinkedIn's down there if you want to connect with me. And also there's a QR code up here if you want to learn a little bit more about Brid and what it is that we do. So we, since launching the business, have worked with a ton of communities. I think, as Zach mentioned earlier, all the way from coding bootcamp communities and edtech communities like Go My Code, all the way to professional communities like Pavilion and the Excellence Factory, and also communities for tech consultants like myself. So we've helped to build from the ground up and also to manage the administration of Slack communities globally, in anywhere from communities from 100 people to over 10,000 people. So yeah, a little bit more about Slack. Some of you may be new to Slack. Some of you might be old hands within the platform. So as Zach's mentioned, Slack is a collaboration tool that for many communities is the first place that they go to find information. So you may have been using Slack for a while, and you may know a small amount about how to use it, but there's definitely somewhat of an art to the etiquette within Slack or how to use Slack. And the viewpoint I take on setting up a Slack community, but also when any member joins your Slack community, is to almost assume that they've never used Slack before. You know, just because even if you're in quite a tech and dev environment or a community, you may assume that everyone knows how to use Slack. But that in many cases is not usually the case. So a lot of people actually don't understand or don't know that Slack is actually an acronym. So Slack is an acronym for Searchable Log of All Conversations and Knowledge. So Slack is designed to reduce the noise, and as Zach mentioned, why many people enjoy using Slack as a platform for communities is its very easily understandable UI, which if they're using it already internally for their business, means that they can set a community up very easily. So all the content inside Slack can be searchable, which makes it very easy to surface the insights around the conversations, but that's when it's used effectively. So rather than sliding into DMs, we want to be sliding out of DMs at Slack and within communities. You know, the community is best powered when it's set up in what we call an open fashion. So when the channels are not locked down, obviously there's going to be a time where you may want to have a few private channels, or you might have a one-on-one DM or with 1 or 2 people. But in general, you want your community workspace to be as open as possible. However, even when you get to the case of 50, 100, or even 200 users, having those in this messaging tool can be great, but you need to know how to use it. So a lot of the times people are simply using Slack for messaging, which is great. You know, that's the basis of Slack. It's the foundation of it. But a lot of people don't know that Slack has many other features, such as the ability to, like we said earlier, make video, voice calls, upload clips, huddle, present or share your screen, and start to create surveys, automations, and much more. And all of these additional features allow you to create a much more rewarding and rich experience within Slack and for your community members. So all sounds great, right? But with all this freedom, there becomes a responsibility to make sure that your community members feel like they're having the information mostly being able to be pulled to them rather than being pushed. When you're in a community, managing a community, whether that be Slack or anything else, sometimes there's a use case where you think that constantly messaging everyone and notifying everyone is the best method. But what we find is that actually, in general, if you start to do this too much, you're going to get people to turn off, and they will either leave your community in totality, or they will start to simply mute all the channels or just not log in. So there's some very powerful tools within Slack which allow you to use features such as @channel, so to message a whole channel, or even @here, which messages everyone who's online in those channels. And these two powerful broadcasting functions would give everyone who has access to that community a notification on their phone, on their laptop, on their Slack. But as we know, regardless of whether they're active or not, if you use @channel too much, it's going to create a sense of urgency, which potentially is going to lead to people being turned off if that message was not relevant to them. So in essence, using these type of messages really needs to be used carefully. So you want to save these for very important fire drill type messages, or for example, once a week where you send the large community-wide announcement. That's when you might want to mention or @channel. But what we do see is that people see that these are a function or feature within Slack, and then either community members or your community team who's running Slack start to use these too often, and actually what it leads to is a decrease in engagement and people turning off from your community. You want to build your Slack community so that it's a rich environment where people feel like it's a safe space, that they're not being constantly spammed in, and that they can go in there and find the information in their own time rather than being constantly bugged about it. So, like I mentioned, Slack sometimes can get hectic real quickly. So you need to make sure that you're using it in the correct way. So rather than mentioning a whole channel, for example, when maybe I might just want to message Matt or Zach, for an example, I might want to just message him. So you can actually just tag the person in that, and only that person will get that message. And likewise, that will make it a lot easier to follow that in-channel conversation. And we'll talk about threading quite soon, which is one of the features which is, I would say, most underutilized, and also leads to people being turned off. So we've talked about channels already. You want to make sure that you have a diverse set of channels, which allow for your community, whether that be an arts or science community, or whether that be a developer community, so that people can actually start to either build their own channels, or you curate those channels for you. So again, Slack comes with lots of permission settings, so you have to decide yourself whether you want to allow community members to set up channels, or if you want to have a system or process where only the admins of your Slack are able to set up those channels. And depending on the type of audience that you have, how open you want to keep your community, you may want to lock those permission settings down so as to not get what we would call a sprawl of hundreds of channels which only have a couple of people in, so that people are not actually feeling very connected to the channels. So like I mentioned, if you have a general channel where you've just sent a large announcement to that channel, you don't want to reply what we call inline to that message. Many people who have not used Slack before will look at it like a SMS messaging tool, or almost like email or WhatsApp, for example. And the biggest mistake that they make is to, when someone says or announces a message, is to start to reply in line. So just after that message, they reply with another one. But that gets very frustrating for users, right? Because you see a large number of messages, one after the other, and sometimes very important posts or content can then be lost within the ether of your Slack community. So one of the features you might want to do is actually lock those channels down. So one of the great features about Slack is having the ability to have only certain people post in a channel. So for potentially community-wide announcements, which are managed by the comms team or the community leader, you would maybe want to have only the admins to post in that channel. So it's a bit more of a cleaner channel. Maybe people can only reply in thread, or they can just react with an emoji. And that brings us on to the next point, which is threads. This is one of the features where, most people who have not used Slack before don't know about, and often start to clutter up your community by not replying in thread. So when someone has posted a message, the best practice is to, on that message, if it's directly related to it. So if Zach has just posted about Tightknit and a new feature, for example, that Tightknit has released, instead of me replying into that channel with, oh, hey, this looks really cool, can I have some more information? What I want to do is actually start a new thread. That way I can keep a really summarized view of all of the comments in the thread based on Zach's new feature in Tightknit, rather than having to follow hundreds of messages to keep abreast of what's going on. Obviously, another most loved feature within Slack, as Zach's already mentioned, is the emoji feature. So emojis often can help you to obviously convey, sentiment, rather than having to, write down every time, a long worded response to something. So you can see here from World Emoji Day, which I believe was recently on the 17th in the Slack community workspace, we actually shared that by, I think, maxing out the number of emojis possibly you could have in Slack. Another great way of engaging people within your community is Giphies. So GIFs are a great way, which are inbuilt within Slack, to be able to post a reaction or response to something, but you obviously want to make sure that that GIF is relevant to your community, which why bringing in community leads and people having eyes on what's going on in the community is super important as well. So another way that we work with customers and clients to not only set up the platform for them or set up the community, but also to make sure that people know about their preference settings, is to help them to organize their Slack. So Slack gives you a lot of control over what you're notified about. So for example, you can mute a channel. You can also set up preferences to alert you for something specific that gets mentioned. So for example, if Tightknit got mentioned in a specific a workspace or a community, or Brid, for example, then I could get a specific notification on that. And you can adjust those notifications depending on whether you're on mobile or on desktop. So another part about communities is that, people like to contribute in many different ways. As I've mentioned, there can be sometimes thousands of people within a channel. And you want to breed a safe environment where people can feel like they can contribute. However, you want to also set up different ways of where people can provide feedback. Some people are a little bit more shy when it comes to posting. So you want to make sure the sentiment within your community is very inclusive, but also give people different ways of providing feedback in terms of how the community is being run or what is happening within it. So, for example, you can set up either polls or posts where people can submit anonymous responses, so that even if they want to share but don't feel comfortable within the large group, they feel like they can. Another top tip when setting up your community, we've talked about some of the different channel names, but is to come up with something which we call, or the terminology is, a naming convention. So a naming convention within Slack is very important, because as your community grows and you start to get more channels, you want to make sure that as a community leader, you're following a naming convention that makes sense for your community. So there's a terminology which is the prefix and a suffix. So prefix being something like group, and then the suffix being announcements. So you may have, for example, different community groups for different regions around the world, for example. So you might want to encourage a community for the UK and a community for the US. So you might have group US, group UK, for example. And what that allows you to do is to have an easier way for people to search and find the channels, but also an easier, cleaner way of making sure that the left-hand sidebar in Slack is easy to follow. Going one step further than that, definitely keeping your house in order in terms of managing your channels means that you want to create what we call sections. So within Slack, you can create sections. You can add emojis to those sections. So you can see here, I have a bunch of different emojis based on all of my channels, meaning that just like within an email inbox where you can create sections there and save different emails, you can do the same thing with channels. And it amazes me the amount of people that use Slack that don't know about this feature. So we'll definitely look into it. Furthering on to sections, Slack's released a tool called Canvas, which I believe was mentioned in a question earlier. And adding a channel canvas is often a good way to help people to understand what that channel is about. So canvases can live separately, or they can live tagged to a channel. So for example, you can have a welcome channel to your community where you can talk about the guidelines of the community, and it's just a space where it's easily able for you to embed not only content but also potential other resources. So the great thing about a canvas is that you can put a Google Sheet, for example, in the canvas. You can maybe upload a PDF or other resources, and all of it can help people to understand, particularly if they've not used Slack before or they're new to a community, what is this channel about and why am I using it? So obviously a huge part of communities is to get people to start to post. As we've mentioned earlier, creating an intro channel is a great way of getting people to welcome themselves into the community, and also having clear guidelines on being supportive and making sure that people understand how and where to use the different features of Slack when they're in the community, but also feel like that they're contributing both by posting themselves and also by consuming. So in Slack, you want to make sure that you're talking like you would be talking with someone, not like an email. The whole point of Slack is to move people away from, potentially quite formal email speak. So you don't need to kind of write, "Hi, my name is," and then sign off each time when you send a Slack message. Within Slack, it's all about keeping it short, sharp, and shiny, as we've mentioned. And further, within Slack, there's a feature called BlockKit, which actually allows you as a community admin to create more richer posts, as you can see here, which may have, for example, like links embedded with them or buttons embedded in those posts. And what we see is that these types of posts, these BlockKit posts, particularly get lots more engagement than just a free text post, for example, which may have, you know, an image attached to it. So definitely recommend looking into BlockKit. Also, teaching and also updating your teams internally, but also the community on how they can use Slack to save information. There's a number of ways to save, pin, and bookmark to make sure that all of this great stuff that's being shared within the community, you can go back to it at some point. Let's say if you want to create a library of information or posts which are shared. And within your Slack community, and there's many third parties that you can use to do this, you can start creating polls, which obviously can lead to some great engagement to be able to help you to understand what your community is liking, understand how you could be doing better, or, you know, you could create a poll, for example, to talk about which channels you know, should we set next. Another great feature within Slack is the ability to set your status. So, you know, you can kind of set, for example, your status so that you can tell everyone, you know, if there's something important going on, why you might not be responding to them. So I'll just finish with a few best practices that we've seen in general when we've implemented Slack communities, and some of the ones that I'm a member of. A few of those would be around, you know, being consistent with your posting. You know, of course, you want the community members to post, but you, if you're leading it, you want to have a cadence of posting. You know, responding and encouraging participation, both within different levels of opinions and different feedback options like surveys and polls, not just always text. Like Zach's mentioned, and through Tighten It, you can see leaderboards and rewarding active members, and also automating some of those tasks through something called workflows. The ability to you know, schedule or automate posts rather than you know, yourself having to do it manually each time. So a Slack community can be great, but I would always say that they usually work really well if you have a mixture of both online and offline, and you use the community to also create events. You know, everyone loves, of course, reading forums, etc. But events is a great way of bringing people together, networking between them, and increasing your engagement. Of course, tracking those metrics in terms of the growth rate, you know, how many emojis are being sent each month. You know, each individual company might have something different, but also as a community lead or member, continuously looking at like feedback on terms of those metrics and how you can make sure that you're keeping up to date with those. Great. So I'll pop back here. I'm not sure if there's any questions maybe that's been answered. If anyone wants to ask any questions, I'm happy to take a few with Zach. So which of the poll apps have worked well in Slack? So I think Polly is one that's one of the most widely used ones, but there's I think a ton of different poll apps that you can use in Slack. Anything else? Zach, maybe you've been on it with answering questions, but any other questions? Happy to answer them.
Not seeing any other. Oh, we just got something come here in the chat.
Yeah, channel canvas is a new
yep.
thing. Yeah, as I said, that's look in the right-hand corner. It looks like a little document. Give that a click. Again, as Zach mentioned as well, some of the features I might have talked about today may be on the Slack paid plan. So yeah, it's good to make sure that you take a look at, if you're in a free community workspace, then you might not be able to do everything that we've mentioned today, but there's definitely I think if you sign up yourself, most people you get kind of 90 days for free on the pro plan. So if you want to do some testing on a Slack workspace, you might want to do that.
All right, Mike. I know you have the wheel of people.
We do. We have a prize wheel. Let me pull this up. Okay. I have to make sure there's not anything else on my screen, which is always a challenge. Wheel of names. All right. Can everybody see this? I'm assuming a yes.
Yep.
I can't see you anymore. All right. We get to spin this a whole 6 times, I believe. And we will mail this to you internationally even. So if you are a winner, Christina Pete, you have to be here. Can somebody who can see, Byron, can you keep me honest here? Christina, are you here? Yes or no?
We couldn't hear you, Mike, when the sound was going.
Oh, the sound was going.
No,
okay, Christina Pete, are you here?
Yeah, she was here. She did say thank you for the information.
No longer
missed it by a minute.
So the way this works, if you are here, we will be able to mail you swag. What I will do is I'll send you a swag code, but I will need your email address. So if you win, privately send Byron or myself your email address, and we will get you a code. Michael Frank, you still here?
Michael Frank is here. So
Winner,
Michael,
chicken dinner.
please message either myself or Mike Reynolds with your info.
Lloyd, are you still here?
Lloyd is not here.
Womp womp. Aaron.
Aaron is still here.
Aaron is here.
All right. VY. That was how you were logged in. Still here?
Yeah, V's here.
V's here.
Perfect. Julia. Still here?
Yes, I can see Julia in the participant list.
All right. Get us an
email. If you do win, I am sending you a DM to ask for your email. So be on the lookout for that.
Ellen, still here?
No Bellin, unfortunately.
Womp womp.
How many people have we gotten so far, by the way?
We've done 4.
Okay.
2 more.
Vi, Julia, Aaron, and Michael. Sarah, are you here?
Sarah Hatfield is not with us, unfortunately.
Sorry, Sarah. Bianca.
Yes.
All right.
Yep, Bianca's here. Are you DMing you right now?
Last one.
Carolyn, are you here?
No.
Womp womp.
Oh wait, she requested
Carolyn
presenter
here?
mode. Yeah, Carolyn's here.
Carolyn, you were here. So it doesn't matter who wins this one.
Exactly.
Carolyn, fantastic. I don't know why you're in presenter mode, but
She raised your hand.
there we go. All right. Carolyn, we got you. All right. Well, hey, thank you very much. If you were a winner, get us an email address. Byron has us into you. Zach, Laurence, thank you both so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks all.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
For having us, Mike.
Thanks for
and
joining.
Yeah, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Byron and I will stay on the line for a minute just to make sure everybody that needs to get us an email address will. But the rest of you, thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.
I've got Viv. I'm just getting Julia right now.
So we need Bianca, Carolyn, Michael, and Aaron.
Yes. Oh, Michael just sent his.
And if you can Slack me those, I already have the workflow pulled up.
Yeah, I can do that definitely.
I can actually show it to you too, so you could do it next time if you wanted.
Oh, perfect.
It's pretty. I mean, it's a very self-explanatory workflow.
Thanks. Okay,
I already
got
requested it, so I have 'em.
cantv.org, the public access channel. I know about CanTV. All right. I got Carolyn's. Who am I? I was missing one more.
You've got Carolyn. Do you have Bianca?
Yes, I got Bianca.
Julia?
Julia, let me see. Oh, hold on. I just got a DM just come in. Just came in, rather. Let's see. I got Carolyn, Michael, Julia, V. I think I was Aaron. I do not
Just waiting
have.
on Bianca Williams.
Oh, Aaron just put it in. He just put it in the chat here. Oh, he is a Salesforce employee, so he can donate to his win to any public sector employee.
He already jumped out.
Yeah.
We can send it to him.
Oh, okay.
And then he can bring it to the next meeting, which will be in the office.
Oh, there we go.
He can sling it out to us. That's fine.
All right.
Salesforce employees don't get in.